three of the other teams, but it will be interesting to see how these players are doing. You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series. Hello and welcome back to the Season 4 Invitational. It is now Winners Bracket Round 2, and we have our first look at the bracket coming up on stream here. Losers Bracket Round 1 just finished, and we saw our first players get eliminated from there. Looking here at the bracket now, we had Docta, our last chance qualifier player, playing in his second ever ETS tournament, I believe, took down the Ski J, who was one of Kenner's picks for top 8, in a close 2-1 match. Shed unfortunately fell to Haidar 2-1. So that's our third VPX member down, although Haidar moves on. He's one of my picks. Voignamir, another LCQ player, was taken down by Flash, who's on Armory, in a close 2-1 matchup. And another one of the top 8 picks, picked by both Lights Out Ace and Rekenner, Tony G, was defeated by Thundershot, another 2-1 battle. Levistra, I cannot pronounce him, took down my pick, Paradox, who is an SPG member that we accidentally left off the team for him on the initial graphic. Paradox was defeated 2-1 as well, and one of the fan favorite Ilya K was taken down by Bradykin in a 2-1 matchup there. We watched Sir Rhino defeat Toth, and finally DMKHS defeated Alunga, who was our round 1 feature match, 2-1. So 8 players out there, 3 VPX members out in short order. So we'll be coming back to that shortly. We're moving on now to Winners Bracket Round 2, which is Moosh versus Tiger HC.
Yeah, we have a Xenon Killers list versus a Time Primal Justice setup. And yeah, it's looking like a pretty exciting matchup. Copper Conduit, Dark Return, and Predator's Instinct being the first 3 cards in Tiger HC's Xenon Killers list. The synergy between these cards is really quite ridiculous. If you get a Predator's Instinct on a Copper Conduit, then you can murder something, Dark Return it back, play it again, even bigger. That'll kill something. You can Dark Return it back again. You can keep doing that until you have like a 2020 Conduit with Killer. NBD, it's not a bad decision to make. There's a lot of interesting synergies in the Xenon Killers deck. They're really fun to play with. You have Instigator with Beast Caller's Amulet. You have Dawnwalker with Beast Caller's Amulet, in which it gets the Infiltrate, kills itself, gets a beast back, and then revives itself. There's a lot of like really fun, cute little interactions there. And Xenon Killers is just a fun deck to watch. So it should be really neat to see that. On Moosh's side, we have Time Primal Justice Chalice. You can talk about this a little bit if you like, aReNGee.
Yeah, well, Chalice is a deck that we've seen a bunch. Over the last couple of weeks, it had a resurgence about end of April, I believe. And it's just looking to play all these 2-attack, high health units, and then make use of Crystalline Chalice as a draw engine to just draw 2, 3, 4 cards, well, usually 2 or 3 cards a turn, and build up until they have a big Channel the Tempest, or usually Grand Parliament is one of the kill conditions. But interestingly, in Moosh's list here, we don't see any copies of Grand Parliament, and we've just got 4 copies of Channel the Tempest as his main way that he's going to be winning the game. Now, you do only need 2 channels plus 1 chip damage to kill your opponent if you have a full hand, but he's looking pretty light on actual kill conditions, but pretty heavy on anti-aggro cards. He's got a lot of silence to slow down the Xenon Killers deck and a lot of removal, but he's also facing a lot of units, so it'll be really interesting to see the balance versus the control deck versus the mid-range here.
Yeah, we should see an interesting matchup. I have my doubts about the Chalice list proceeding too far into the top 8s, but we will see if any of them do make it through. And we've got like a definite slow control deck here, and you usually don't need to have that many kill conditions in a control deck because Chalice, of course, does generate big units all on its own, and really you're just trying to keep every turn interesting and keep every turn full of good decisions for you, while your opponent is just forced to attack into Marison's Disciple tokens and Scorpion Wasps and big Combre healers and all of the little things that just gum up the ground and make for fairly difficult threats. it's a deck that really tries to take advantage of other types of control and get a little bit ahead of those aggro decks. And we'll see how that turns out for Moosh.
Yeah, and I think we're going down into game here. So, well, the best way to figure out a matchup is to watch it live. So that's what we're going to do now as we move down into the game.
Yeah.
Tiger has already chosen his hand, and Moosh has finally made his mulligans. So Tiger starting off with a couple Argenport Instigators, and notably a fully foiled deck.
Gotta have those premiums. It's always a nice way to get yourself started. Typically, if you have a premium set, it means you've spent an awful lot of time playing Eternal, but it is not necessarily a factor of quality of play. So we're going to see how that ends up happening, and yeah, at least we'll get to see some shiny cards.
Well, alternatively, you've only played one deck, and Tiger HC is quite known for Xenon. He's been playing Xenon on ladder for a long time, and it's been his deck of choice in tournaments. So he's very comfortable with it. He's played through the Chalice metagame for a while, so he probably has a fairly good handle on this matchup.
Yep, we have Argenport Instigator coming down for Tiger, with the Scorpion Wasp being set up to block it. That's looking pretty solid for Moosh. I think that overall, Moosh might be in a bit of trouble here, but neither side has really made any major gains.
Interesting that he prioritized the second Instigator over something like the Friendly Wisp in order to get that card draw, because the most natural follow-up here would be Sandstorm Titan, but now you're missing out on the draw. And here you've drawn Dawnwalker, so you've once again put yourself in an interesting situation. I imagine Dawnwalker plus Suffocate will be the line to stay aggressive.
It certainly is an aggressive play. Suffocate lines up very well against those combat healers, manages to knock them down even though they cost a decent amount of extra power and extra time for Moosh, and does just give you a decent aggro advantage. However, Moosh will be up ahead on life for a while. He's still going to be at 24, 23, so yeah, after the Suffocate, we're going to see that Dawnwalker come out, and we're going to see exactly what happens after that.
Yeah, Moosh. He's in a bit of a... He's on the back foot here, because Dawnwalker plus these Dark Returns is going to be doing some pretty good damage, and Suffocate means that little Scorpion there is unlikely to be able to trade with anything.
Yeah, Marison's Disciple is a good card for going wide, but it's not a great card when lined up against Dawnwalkers, because obviously the Dawnwalkers don't care too much about the tokens. They just roll right over them and do their damage anyways, and then you play Sandstorm Titan, you get it back, and really it hasn't cost you too much in terms of tempo. Tiger throwing the Suffocate on the deadly unit just so that he can get his Argenport across, and from there he's going to go ahead and swing in with these Dawnwalkers and try and get some serious value out of that.
Interesting that Moose chose the deadly version rather than the 3/3, as the 3/3 would have also traded with the board. It's possible that he was planning to take the damage this turn and set up for any potential like Sandstorm Titans or Twin Broods or other big stuff like that later in the game. Either way, the Suffocate takes care of it, and Tiger is now set up to slam a Sandstorm Titan next turn, regardless of what Moosh does.
Yep, with the Dawnwalker and the Friendly Wisp both taking advantage of the Sandstorm Titan, Moosh kind of has to deal with most everything on the board in order to prevent Tiger from getting significant amounts of advantage. The Dark Return is fairly effective, basically just for getting your stuff back. I mean, there are quite a few things that he might actually want to Dark Return, but the one that he wants to Dark Return the most is Sandstorm Titan. So Moosh passing the turn means that Tiger's probably going to have a very good one.
Yeah, looking at Moosh's hand here, he's got the second Justice, but he's missing the second time for the Temple Student, and doesn't have 5 power to play any of the rest of his stuff. So he's basically just on Dawnwalker here. It looks like he'll be able to just on Desert Marshal. Looks like he'll be able to marshal the Desert Dawnwalker here, and set himself up pretty nicely that all he needs to deal with is that Sandstorm Titan.
Yeah, the Sandstorm Titan draw, of course, means that there will be more threats for Tiger. I think that in some situations you almost want to silence the Friendly Wisp, but Dawnwalker represents more in terms of just sheer board advantage, and that means that that's probably the target to go for here. The nice part about the Sandstorm Titan here, of course, is that it does, in fact, set up for We see the Sandstorm Titan coming out early here, which means that Tiger just guaranteeing his draws off the Friendly Wisp, not even going to allow Moosh the chance to use Desert Marshal on Friendly Wisp, and instead just attacking straight in.
Yeah. Interesting that he did it in that order as well, as it does put the Friendly Wisp down to the ground to be able to be blocked there. But here we see that Tiger has really got his draw combo going on. Twin Brood plus Friendly Wisp is going to get him more cards, and then Dark Return bringing back a Twin Brood just means that he's going to have beef for days.
Yep. It is a draw from the Void effect, so the sauropods do echo when they are Dark Returned. So that's a good way to get 3 big dinosaurs, and since these dinosaurs tend to die a little bit more often than Sandstorm Titans, it's not a bad call for Tiger in general. Tiger has the board. He's got a decent amount of card advantage. Moosh is mostly going to be playing off of those harsh rules to get some significant advantage later in the game. But he's in a lot of trouble here. He really needs to set up a little bit better against what's going to happen to him.
Yeah, he's got the Vanquish, but he needs that an extra time sigil to really unlock his hand, because he's got 2 5-drops and a double time card in hand that he just can't cast. Looks like Tiger is going to be able to put enough pressure on that Moosh isn't going to be able to come back, even with a harsh rule or two.
Yeah, the Lumen Defender helps here. It prevents some of the pressure and basically means that if Tiger spends a turn just playing one big unit, Moosh can hold out for a while and not have to harsh roll. Or he can harsh roll twice and then play the Lumen Defender and get a little bit of a setup there. Tiger probably needs to draw a little bit more gas this game just to get through, but what he's going to draw is going to be a little bit tricky.
Goes for the Dark Return on Sandstorm Titan. Looks like he really wants to get the Friendly Wisp draw in next turn, would be my guess for why he's doing it that way.
That seems like a pretty solid route. Like, he does get those extra card draws, and that's probably a little more effective than playing Twin Brood Sauropod multiple times a turn. This is just a little bit faster in terms of making sure that you have your board refilled. So yeah, it's pretty reasonable here. It does mean that you miss out on the Dark Return Sauropod combo, which is a lot of fun, but I think Tiger's probably got the right idea.
Yeah, and he technically has lethal even in the face of a single blocker here against Moosh. So what you're really thinking about now is how to best play around harsh rule. That may be just deploy the Twin Brood. I don't think you play the Friendly Wisp or the Sandstorm Titan. I think it's either Twin Brood or nothing here.
Yeah, I think he's set up for the Twin Brood. He's actually played his 6th power already, so he doesn't want to wisp into Titan. He does push the Twin Brood Sauropod just so that if there are 2 chump blockers, he has a lethal, but that does mean that Moosh can draw a power and harsh roll, which he doesn't do. He gets the undepleted version. Temple Scribe gains him 1. That puts him out of lethal range if he manages to find another blocker. But it would basically have to be another Temple Scribe or that Desert Marshal in his hand. At that point, his blocks are 3 damage plus 2 for the units he's losing.
Desert Marshal can
silence
yes.
the Archivort, yeah. So
Vera's
he will
favor,
have that option.
Vera's favor sort of makes it all moot, though, as one of the blockers is removed, and there's just not enough on Moosh's side to stop this attack. So Chalice got stuck on 2 or stuck on 4 and just couldn't compete.
Tiger burning bright, a touch of shadow in the night. And we have the game sealed up. And now we are going into game 2, a Tiger versus Moosh.
LocoPojo. Player, caster, streamer, poet.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, so looking at the sideboards for this list, we have Rain of Frogs, Auric Runehammer, Vanquish. Oh, is that the right list? Yeah, that's the TJP Chalice list. Okay, so yeah, we have Rain Frogs, Vanquish, Decay, Auric Runehammer, Island's Favor, Backlash, Protect, and Permafrost on the side of Moosh. On the side of Tiger, we have Sabotages, Suffocates, Annihilates, Decays, Death Strikes, Stewards, 2 Obelisks, and a Predatory Carnosaur. And I think that that's going to make for an interesting set of sideboards. Tiger's probably going to want to throw in those Sabotages to get rid of the Channel the Tempests and Chalices. But he might want to keep it aggressive too. There's a lot of different ways that he can play this.
So I don't think you want to go too excessive on Tiger side. The sabotages come in because they hit, the chalices, the harsh rules, like basically everything that Moosh is going to be relying on. Suffocate's probably pretty good too, since all of Moosh's cards intentionally have low strength. They're all going to fall to that suffocate, so that's a really good pickup there. I think you can leave the rest of your list alone. The obelisk can come in if you want them. Um, Maybe the Carnosaur if you want a bit more top end. But I'm pretty happy with Tiger's list if I was Tiger here.
Yeah, he can play some interesting games with the obelisk. There are two decays in the sideboard of Mush's deck, and obelisk is such an important card for the various decks that sometimes if you're going to see that card in the sideboard, you might freak out and try and put in the decays. If that happens, then the only valid targets are Beast Color's Amulet, so Tiger might actually be better off leaving it out than putting it in. At the same time, it's not a card that Mush has great answers to, and it's a card that does allow him to get over those Lumen Defenders and some of the bigger threats. I think that overall it looks like it's probably not going to come in. We're going to see cards like Steward, we're going to see cards like Sabotage come in from Tiger side.
So Moosh does have the Permafrost and the Vanquishes, which should help get him to that later game. But I think he needs to bring something like Rain of Frogs in if he wants to prevent just sort of the recursion loops that the Xenon deck is capable of coming out. See, Xenon's always very annoying for anyone who's not playing Steward because the units just keep popping out of the void. You can never keep them dead forever. So it'll be a tough ask for Moosh to keep the Xenon deck from ever having anything on board. But it looks like we're going down in the game, so we'll have to see how the players have boarded.
Yeah, I think my main question for this is going to be who brought decays and for what reasons. Both players only have like 4 to 6 relics. They're both pretty high impact relics, but also ones that are slower in the game. So we will see if either of them actually ends up being useful.
So Tiger has a decay in his opener, so I'd imagine he brought it in. I'm a little bit questionable of that. It felt like last game he was really on the tempo plan rather than the sit back and value plan. So I think the sabotages would have been a little bit more effective as a proactive plan. It's possible he brought them both in, but still an interesting card to see.
Yeah, I
It,
think it's particularly useful here because you know that they're pretty likely to be bringing in those permafrosts
Mhm.
just to stabilize the aggro game, and that makes Decay a more tempo-oriented card. Tiger's opener does not look good, though. He's currently sitting on 2 time and 2 Argent ports, and those 2 Argent ports are amazing, but without the Shadow to cast them, he might be looking at a very quick run into Game 3.
Yeah, that's a little bit of an awkward redraw, it looks like. Don't actually have Moosh's hand in front of me. Perhaps you can tell us.
His stream is down, so we cannot see his hand at the moment, but we might see it in a little bit. At the moment, we're just waiting for these two to get into a game. Okay, Tiger actually does get to redraw this hand, so
Oh,
uh, Argent Port Instigator available, along with Copper Conduit and Twin Brood Sauropods setting up for 5 apiece. So yeah, he's got a nice little curve here. He's looking pretty good going into the first turn.
now Conduit is always an interesting card because of that overwhelm that's so important. You can put as many chump blockers as you want in front of it. Once it gets up to a 9-9 or a 10-10, it's going to do a whole bunch of damage when it crashes in, even if you've got a couple small guys to put in front. And that is what happens often in these Xenon lists. Dark Return, so powerful with Conduit as it keeps the boost every time it comes around. So the first time, maybe it's a 5-5. Next time it gets 6, and it's already an 11-11 just on the second cast.
Yeah, Tiger has to decide between Friendly Wisp or Copper Conduit here, both of which are really interesting options. Copper Conduit is the more aggressive play, and I think that in general Tiger wants to be the beatdown here, so he's going to go ahead and go straight for it.
Yeah, he couldn't activate the Friendly Wisp next turn with the cards in his hand, so looks to get a bit more damage through.
Yeah, he can now set up Friendly Wisp for Sauropod, or he can continue to save it. Sometimes you actually do want to save those Friendly Wisps if you know that your opponent has a lot of good answers to it, and just play out your tempo, wait until that turn 6 when you draw a Sandstorm Titan, and then just go for it. Getting Friendly Wisps draws is such a crucial factor in the game that sometimes it's not worth it to set it up early if you already have access to all of this gas.
He may just go for the Conduit and does choose to go staying on the aggressive plan. Moosh is still a fair ways away from Harsh Roll, even if he has it, and just a single unit isn't going to be able to stabilize this board all that well.
Yeah, Wisdom of the Elders helps him draw the power he needs. He's already got the double green influence, which means he's a little bit further ahead than he was before. He can try to permafrost something if he has it. He can find any sort of small answer just to keep the board a little bit more stable. Argenport Instigator means that blockers in general are not a great proposition for him, but Combray Healer is probably one of the better ones.
Yeah, but Amber Monument plus the power just means that Tiger's still drawing gas, and he's got a whole bunch of cards in hand just to keep pushing through. Even with the best blocker available, he still takes net 3 damage after the life gain, and there's another card coming down.
Moosh is in a lot of trouble here. You'll notice he didn't play his 4th power, which means that he's not going to get to Harsh Rule on time. And not getting into Harsh Rule on time means that Tiger can continue to slam units on the board. Every unit that he puts down on a turn where Moosh only has 3 power is guaranteed to come across for extra damage in the game. So Moosh getting the Vanquish, but he still gets the extra damage from just having 2 extra dudes. So Permafrost coming out to slow him down even further. And now it's looking a little bit more reasonable. He's managed to regain some control here, but he's still taking 3 a turn.
And he still missed another power, so Harsh Rule is still just a dream in the distance.
Yep, sitting on absolutely nothing for the moment, looking for just extra power here. His deck really needs to get to that 4 to 6 range to be an effective Chalice deck, and at the moment he's just getting run over. He will get some small units down, but Argenport Instigator really pressures out against those smaller units. Like, the token strategy is not that effective when you have 4 Instigators in your deck and you're consistently drawing 2 of them. I think Tiger is pretty well favored to win this game at this point.
Yeah, Moosh really needs something like a Scorpion Wasp on the 5/4 plus a power this turn if he's going to start gaining some ground back. Because with this many cards, I think a sweeper is really his best out.
Yeah, like, we have another Vanquish. That's a pretty effective card
At the
here
start,
since, yeah, a little bit of extra damage and still gets to defend himself. He's got an Aegis up, which means that he gets to basically set up on that side and get that extra power played. Next turn, he might be able to Harsh Rule. Tiger, however, really only has to maintain. He doesn't even really need to play units here, but he'll probably put down a Reinhardt just to try and push lethal.
he's just drawing gas. But honestly, if Moosh draws the power Harsh Rules and then has another good follow-up play, I think this game starts to turn on its head. Tiger hasn't been able to activate his friendly whisk draw, so he's still just doing on 1 draw a turn. And Moosh has a lot of cards in hand if he can stay alive long enough. It's not like the Xenon deck has a lot of reach.
Yeah, the main reach here is just making sure that you have those friendly wisp draws up. He's not found it yet, so it could be that he ends up in a situation where he's not going to find a 4-drop to play into Wisp, and at that point he has much less of a chance of refueling his hand. If he's ever forced to play out Wisp without getting the draw, I think this game turns in Moosh's favor. Moosh looking for that extra power for the Harsh Rule. If he finds it, he's golden. If he doesn't, it's going to be real rough for him from the future on.
Yeah, especially since there's a lot of stuff with Overwhelm in play right now, which makes chump blockers much less appealing.
He can block the 5/5. The Instigator does, in fact, prevent him from... Like, the Instigator will trigger, but it'll trigger all simultaneously, so the Aegis will protect him. And he's found his 5th power, but it was depleted, I believe.
And now there's a Dark Return, so we can see those Twin Broods come back if Tiger desires. Alternatively, we could see a Conduit, and
Conduit's
just make a
not bad.
massive Overwhelm.
Yeah, you might even make a small Overwhelm. If you Dark Return Conduit and then play Friendly Wisp into Conduit, then you get a really good setup there because you get to trigger that draw, which is what you've been trying to do most of the game. Here, take a full 5 from the 5/5 and instead double blocks the 3/3.
It's an interesting choice.
I think it's not unreasonable to get rid of the Argenport Instigator in particular. That card just represents the biggest problem in terms of just overall chip damage. Moosh knows he's going to 1 or 2, so anything he can do to prevent that from killing him is a really good thing for him. Dark Return here means he can play down Instigator, and that's game. Moosh can't harsh roll here because he'll take 2 from the Combre healer. Very clever play from Tiger there, sealing up the game.
Well, he can play Lumen Defender, and that keeps him alive.
It gains him 5, and yeah, he is just barely alive here. He gets to block the 5/5. Sabotage throws a harsh rule probably out of Moosh's hand, and then from here he gets to block the Argenport Instigator, take 3 plus another 2, and go back down to 2 again. That's still not a good position if you want to be harsh ruling for the game, but it's possible that he can find some way out of this. I think the block here would be to block the Argenport Instigator with the Lumen Defender and just try and harsh rule the 5/5. But that depends on whether or not the Sabotage is actually hitting harsh rules. We can't see what Tiger is currently looking at in terms of Moosh's hand.
It looks like it missed.
No, a
It looks
complete
like
whiff.
Moosh just has no spells, so it doesn't even have that as an option. The danger with blocking the Instigator is that you end up with still 2 units in play and 1 Instigator. So, Instigator.
Yep, you need some way to silence the Instigator. And in addition, you also need to silence the Friendly Wisp. So this is not looking good for Moosh.
No.
He's still way too low to be dealing with Tiger's threats.
Especially with no spells in hand.
No spells in hand. If he draws a harsh rule, he's still dead. So I'm not sure if Moosh has another out here. Another Lumen Defender would be pretty close. It would allow him
that's
to...
his best line.
Yeah. Desert Marshal silences Friendly Wisp, and that is...
It's not.
It's the game from
That's
Argenport
game
Instigator.
after this Instigator draw seals it up. Yeah, the second Instigator plus just the Reinarch attacking means that he's going to be able to push over for damage. Unless we could see some kind of a second Desert Marshal could be huge here.
Yeah, a second Desert Marshal I think still leaves him dead to lethal from the Argenport Instigator. Playing the second Instigator here I think seals Tiger's victory. If he silences one of them, his blocks don't line up in a way that he doesn't lose at least 2 units and therefore take 2 damage. Probably not going to make it, but we will see. Moosh could pull this out, having a protect of some kind, some sort of like special effect. I'm trying to think of what's in his list that could actually 2 protects at his side, so if he found one of those, he'd be okay, but looks like he's dead.
Doesn't. And so Moosh falls to Xenon, 2-0, and will be moving down to the losers bracket. Tiger HC moves on at 2-0.
There was some very good play from Tiger there. We saw some plays that you generally would not have seen from players who were less experienced with the deck. He was playing very hard around using the Friendly Wisp at times when he was guaranteed to get the draw. He was doing some smart things with Argenport Instigator where he set up the combo damage such that Harsh Rule couldn't kill him. Like, he really just made a lot of really clever plays there, and he chose to play units at times that were just very effective for him and gave Moosh no options, even when Moosh might have potentially had options in his hand. At this point, I think that, that worked out fairly well, and we'll see another Chalice deck dropping into the loser's bracket. Overall, Moosh really needed to get himself a little bit better set up in terms of power against that deck, and just having a power base that didn't quite work against the deck was probably his biggest problem for those games.
Yeah, well, you're going to need to rein in the smugness about the Chalice going down as we move over to another Chalice deck, actually. Our other round 2 match that we're moving to as backup is level 13 David on the Elder Titans Chalice deck. So same as Moosh against Kalimdir on his Felnscar control list.
Yeah, this is promising to be pretty interesting. Felnscar control and TJP Chalice match up very, very similarly against each other. They both have a lot of ways to gum up the board. They both have a lot of ways to gain health and just generally like make threats that are kind of scary, with the Vara's continued play of all of the small units on Kalimdir's side and level 13 David's just continued boosting of Amber Acolytes and other things like that. I think that, it's going to be really dependent on the plays. And of course, if you get a couple of lucky draws, that can help too. Calendar looking at a Ruin off of his Celestial Omen to destroy the Chalice, but he might want to go for something else, such as an Azindil's Gift.
The fact that he did it main phase makes it a little bit less likely that he goes for that. But here we see goes for Vera. Interesting.
Yeah, he did it main phase just to posture, let him know he had it. Uh,
So
give David
this is game 3.
And this is game 3, so it's pretty likely that David is actually running decays against Azindil's Gift.
Mm-hmm.
And we will see if there are like good answers there. I think Kalimdor is right to play the Varas here, just because they are just a really effective control card that's a lot harder to deal with than an Azindil's Gift. And overall, he's going to have a lot of pressure. But David is actually establishing a pretty solid Chalice board, and this is really one of the places where Chalice decks can shine. If you are up at this level of power, you are fairly well favored against some of the other control decks, just because you have infinite sources of draws that also present threats that Felon control decks really don't like dealing with. They aren't really comfortable with these like 4/3s and 4/4s. They're just a little too small to be killed by all of the things, or a little too big to be killed by all of the things like Lightning Storm and Black Sky Harbinger, and a little too big to be efficient targets against Death Strike and Annihilate.
Yeah, well, we'll really have to see what's in his void to see how useful this Vera is, but he's going to get to play Veras a lot. Between 2 Veras and a Grasping at Shadows. So it really just becomes a matter of, can Kalimdor's void fight against David's hand? Because David has a lot of cards.
Yep, there's an awful lot of extra just nastiness in David's hand. We might see a Scorpion Wasp here, but that would basically allow Kalimdor to just get extra swings off of the Black Sky Harbinger. So
He didn't
David,
have anything in the void?
yeah, nothing in the void at the moment.
All right, well.
So we have even read that Vara and chosen not to throw his Scorpion Wasp, which would have been a really good play. I can't see his hand at the moment, but if he does have a Scorpion Wasp in his hand, that's pretty exceptional. All right, so we see a Harsh Rule out from David. That clears the board. Vara sets up the chain, of course, but and David does in fact have a Scorpion Wasp in his hand, so he held onto it for the Vara. And I think he's going to be pretty well positioned as a result. Like, he's got another Harsh Rule against this Vara. The Grasping at Shadows means that Kalimdor's going to get this chain going one more time, but after that, we will see if David can recover.
Since it is game 3, there could be backlashes in which case that may not work either. But otherwise, it's possible that the Vera chain could be good enough.
Yeah, it's looking kind of rough for David right now, just because Protect doesn't really help him. Channel the Tempest doesn't really help him. He needs to find 2 separate answers for the Varas, because if you kill only one of them, then your opponent can just play a Felon Bloodcaster. And Kalimdor picking up a Voprex the Great Ruin, or rather throwing it away, and just going straight for the Vara Resurrection of Voprex.
Now, it is a shadow unit, which means you can bring it back, which means that...
Yeah, I didn't even notice that was in the deck, and I'm quite delighted. That must have been a sideboard inclusion. I'm always glad to see Voprex. He's really good against the Chalice matchup. This isn't like his finest hour. He's certainly only getting rid of a Temple Scribe, but overall, that's looking pretty solid.
Here he's a little bit worse than the Harbinger would, as it just kills a 1/1, but it is a 5/5.
Yeah, it's looking fairly solid. It is a decent flyer. I feel like Kalimdor might have actually wanted to go for the Black Sky Harbinger there, just because he knows that he's only going to get the... So getting the extra health is important. It actually means that he's better positioned against Channel the Tempest than to Channel the Tempest, which appears to be what David is going for. So Voprex might have been a mistake here. It's certainly flashy, but I think it's the wrong card, especially since you can get that back with Felm Bloodcaster into a better board. And now Kalandir's actually looking to be in a bit of trouble, provided David has the second Channel the Tempest, which he does.
David has the second channel, yeah. Kalimdor is dead. The Bloodcaster will bring back the Harbinger, but it'll only gain 1 life, and 12 is exactly as much damage as Channel can deal. So that would be a tough way.
Black Sky Harbinger would have prevented him from dying to the Channel, but I think he'd be dead either way because David could play down this Desert Marshal here. And oh no, Kalimdor has Death Strike. So yeah, if he played the Black Sky Harbinger instead of the Voprex, that would have worked out a little bit better for him. Instead, Black Sky Harbinger puts him at 12, and that is enough that David should be able to kill him with a Channel.
Kalimdor woeing his Voprex to Bradykin in the chat as we see on stream.
Yeah,
so
we have.
He knows it, we know it, and now it's just a matter of does David have it.
Yep, we have 10 damage here. Or we have 10 cards in hand, so David will draw 3. He's counting them up, and I believe
it'll go to
that
12
he should get a full
then,
12.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't play Desert Marshal or Protect here, and doesn't mess up and play a power at the start of his turn, he should just have it. Does he see it? That's an important question. He looks like he's considering playing a Desert Marshal. Like that's game for David if he plays it.
Well, barring another harsh rule. Oh my god, he played it.
Okay, well, he does have harsh rule, so that at least really helps him out here. And now we're into a different situation entirely. This is, I've actually not seen David make play mistakes like these before. He's generally a very solid player, so this is interesting to watch. And now we're going to see a harsh rule. We're going to see a much fancier game as a result. David can play another Desert Marshal and silence Vara again, which will prevent any further Grasping at Shadows shenanigans. And he can still take control of this game. All he needs is to channel. Oh, he's actually chaliced for the lethal. I think he had that opportunity anyways. So this isn't necessarily a play mistake. It's just overkill.
Okay.
That works. No, that's 12.
He found it. I think he missed it, counted his channel, and then drew. It looks like so. What actually happened was that Kalimdor made a misplay, not death striking the Desert Marshal on his turn. Was what happened, because then David wouldn't have had the line to draw back into channel lethal.
Yeah, David did, it would be considered a play mistake because he did give him one more opportunity to save himself from channel lethal. And that's a very, very close game. And we do see David take it, and that is a 3-2. Or 3-1. 2-1. Oh my goodness.
2-1.
He won! He's victorious.
So, David,
some amount of numbers are higher than others.
David with the channel deck moves on, and looking at the rest of the bracket here, Sarius took down Manus 2-0 in the Elder Titans Chalice Control Mirror, which we did not watch. Tabu took down Tatsumaki. Child Roland moves on, as does oh man, I can never pronounce this name. Baba Mavs is, I believe, what we are going with. So very exciting. Winners bracket round 3. Up at the top of the table, Angry Chicken takes down the number 1 seed Unearthly with Big Combre versus Rakano in a pretty convincing 2-0.
Yeah, that's a rough matchup for Rakano sometimes, and Angry Chicken has generally won those tournaments by designing his decks to be good against Rakano. I think that a lot of times people tend to ignore those aggro matchups and get knocked out of the tournaments a lot earlier as a result. It's sad to see Unearthly's Rakano deck going without actually getting a chance to watch it. He did include 2 Jeks in this current list, and that just tickles me to no end. So a fine send-off for Unearthly, but unfortunately he will not be proceeding onwards.
Well, he'll be going down to the losers bracket to battle it out there.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Well, we might see him come back then.
that was winners bracket, which is where we will be moving after a short break, just to get ourselves set up. So we'll be back very quickly with losers bracket round 2. Winners bracket is done. So we'll be back with that.